both the state Senate and the state Assembly. So what do? We got to work. We organized year-round, block by block, voter by voter, to take back this state and move us forward. And now look at us. We have a fantastic slate of statewide elected officials. We're going to get some new ones next year, too. And we have a majority on our court, a majority that we just solidified. And we had a record number of Democrats we elected to the state legislature last year. And next year, we are going to win the Senate, we are going to win the Assembly, we are going to retain the governorship, and we are going to pass policies that improve people's lives. Now, it takes everybody. It takes volunteers, it takes voters, it also takes our elected officials. So if you're a state and local elected official, I'd like you just to stand up. If you're already standing, maybe raise your hand, be recognized. Then we got Senator Johnson, Representative Clancy. Please thank them. It's an honor, right? Yeah, look at you. Yeah, front row seat, huh? Now, we can't ever stop organizing. The real secret to our success has been keeping it going. I am so thankful that you are all here. At the end of the day, we each have one voice, one vote, and one way out of the mess that we're in. It's a fight like hell. So thank you, and I'd like to introduce somebody that has been a champion for Wisconsin, a champion for the working class, who has never given up, who has stayed in the fight continuously, just an absolute hero. Please welcome your former Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes! All right. Thank you.
I just hope you all know that I love you so much, and that's why I cannot ever give up on the state of Wisconsin. This state has given me so much, and I owe it for my entire life, for the people who helped me get anywhere in my life, and also for the next generation, because that's what this is all about. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And I do want to give another round of applause, or I want to make sure you give another round of applause to Devin, newly elected chair. It is not an easy job. It is not an easy job. There are no off years in Wisconsin, and Devin has been hard at work behind the scenes for years, making sure that every single victory that we have the resources to make it work. So thank you, Devin. We are expecting great things from you. You got a crowd of people who are going to be real mad if you mess up. No pressure at all. But we got some tough times ahead of us. But I do fully believe that we have great times ahead of us as well, because it's not just the momentum that's on our side. It's the ideas, it's the vision that's on our side. It's the people that are on our side. We are here today to do what Republicans won't, and that is to listen. We are here to listen to the people. We're not here to lay blame. We're not here to point fingers, except where necessary. But we're not here to make excuses either. We are here because we deserve so much more all across the country. We're here because we deserve so much more in Wisconsin. We've been failed before. What is going on in Washington, D.C. has happened here before, and I know you all remember it vividly. It's 2015 now, or 2025 now, 15 years ago. We dealt with an election that was a catastrophe for so many of us, for working people, for public schools, for public school teachers, for public employees, for our roads. Remember Scott Holes? Yeah, remember Scott Holes? For our public transportation, for our voting rights, the right to get an abortion. Everything was under attack. And that's because they had a playbook that they were waiting to use as soon as they got elected. And as Democrats, we haven't always had a playbook, and we haven't always been ready for the moment. There have been opportunities that have been in front of us that unfortunately we didn't take full advantage of. And we learned some real hard lessons. And I am hoping for a better day in the state of Wisconsin in 2026. I'm hoping for a better day in this country in 2026 for the midterms. But the change that we desire, the change that we so desperately deserve, it won't just happen. And as people all across this country are rising up, we just saw it yesterday with the 1st Congressional District Town Hall. Was anybody there? Well, good. Well, I hear you missed a good one because Brian Style apparently showed up, made up every excuse in the book. You were there, one of those rabble-rousers. Let's give her a round of applause for being there. But I do want to say, though, just as it is important and necessary for us to hold Republicans accountable, we do have to hold our own accountable. We have to make sure that Democrats are actually stepping up to meet the moment and fighting for us. Because there is no reason in the world why we are losing the working class vote. We are the party of the working class. I said it how many times on my commercial? My dad worked third shift. My mom was a public school teacher. How many times I got to say it? We are a party of working class individuals, people who built this country, people who built this state, people who make it function, people who truly make America great regardless of where they're from, regardless where they're born, who they love, how they identify, all those things that they try to use to keep us separate. This is what makes America function. This is what makes America the greatest country on earth. But we have some problems. We have some challenges that we must address. We understand that everybody does not have the same opportunities across this state, across this country. And that's the work that we have to do to make right. We have to make America a place where everybody can be successful, where everybody can truly have a shot at the American dream, where everybody can get ahead and live a good life. Because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. And a lot of folks say, Mandela, what have you been up to lately? I tell them I've been working with Power to the Polls, and I got my folks right here in the back, Power to the Polls. Power to the Polls was around before I joined the team, and it's folks like Kalina who've been doing this work way longer than I have. Kalina has been an inspiration to me in terms of organizing and so many others, but what we do is we find those infrequent voters, the people who may or may not show up in a presidential election. We get those folks who are truly undecided on whether they're going to go to the poll or not to cast a ballot. And we turn them from infrequent presidential voters to regular spring voters. We turn those folks into the most educated people in their communities because you can knock on all the doors you want to. And it does help increase voter turnout. We knock on doors. But what is most important is when we equip voters with the information that they need to make an informed decision. Because an educated electorate is an engaged electorate. And that's the gap that we want to close. We want to make sure everybody is not swayed, or that no one is swayed by disinformation. We want to make sure that everyone can show up knowing the truth, because the truth seems real rare these days. We want to make sure that folks know who is actually standing up, fighting for them, and who is actually making their lives more difficult. And honestly, it should be pretty plain. It should be pretty clear. But it's still not. And that's why it requires all of us to step up, to show up, to become organizers in our own communities. As soon as I sat down, and I'm glad I sat where I sat. I got my former colleague, LaTanya Johnson. We got elected to the assembly together. I can't tell you how much I love LaTanya, but I got to sit next to Jan. And as soon as I sat next to Jan, she said, I hope you're ready to fight. I said, Jan, I'm ready to fight. And I know you're ready to fight too. And the reason why I am ready to fight is because there are folks all across this state, all across this country, in rooms just like this, with people who are fired up and ready to go, people who are demanding more, people who want a better quality of life, if not for themselves, for their neighbors. If not for their neighbors, they want a better life for strangers, because we all do better when we all do better. It's not a secret. I'm willing to fight for somebody I don't know. I'm willing to stand up and do the right thing for a person I've never met before, because it matters that much to me. I know my life is better when somebody else's life is better. Wisconsin has been the home of progressive ideas, of progressive vision. Wisconsin has been the place that has led this country before. Now, unfortunately, we've had some slip-ups. We've had some people who've misrepresented us. A former governor that did it, one of our U.S. senators who's still doing it. We have an out-of-control legislature that refuses to put the people first. They refuse to put the people first, so this midterm election, we have a chance to put Republicans in the legislature last. We have a chance to put them in the minority to make sure that we have leaders who are actually going to fight to improve Wisconsin, to make this a much better place, to make it the example that it should be, a place that fights for environmental justice, a place that stands up for people regardless of their color, regardless of their religion, a place that offers opportunity for our young people. We're one of the states that funds higher education at the lowest rates in this entire. How do we expect our children to be able to get ahead if they can't afford to get an education, which is already a wild concept that you have to afford an education? We are one of like 9 states that has yet to expand Medicaid. So many people left uncovered, so many people who refuse to go to a doctor because they don't want a surprise bill. So many people who are gone into medical debt, medical bankruptcy. That shouldn't be the way here in Wisconsin. We need to make sure that everybody has access to health care. We need to make sure that everybody has access to higher education. We need to make sure that our public schools are fully funded. We have to fight to make sure that our children who are going to school every day can do so safely. We have to end this era of active shooter drills, the scourge of gun violence that is truly wreaking havoc on communities. I know that better is possible. I still believe that better is possible. That's why I show up and fight every single day. But I tell you, from now until the midterm, and even throughout the midterm, I'm going to need you to stand up with me. I'm going to need us to stand together. I'm going to need for us to show up. I'm going to need for us to speak up. I'm going to need for us to all demand better. I'm going to need for us all to demand justice, because while we have these insane attacks on our institutions, the media, higher education, the judiciary, everything that is supposed to hold this country in place, we see just how fragile those institutions are. We see the president who's come through like a wrecking ball. And I don't know if you all remember, a couple months ago online, there was this question, can 100 men beat a gorilla? I'm not sure if you saw it. Somebody posed a question, can 100 men beat a gorilla? And one of the best responses I saw was, I think 100 men could beat a gorilla, but everybody has to be dedicated to the cause. So just like the 100 people have to be dedicated to the cause from the start, we all have to be dedicated to the cause to defeating this gorilla in the White House at the ballot box this November. To flip state legislatures, to flip Congress, and to give us all a fighting chance. Now, there's somebody who's with us today, the person you all came to see, somebody who I've gotten a chance to know. I saw you was coming to town. I said, oh, man, thanks for coming to town, because we need this sort of energy. But we can't let this energy stay in this room. This energy has to go out into every single community, has to go out into the conversations we have with our friends, our family members, our neighbors. We have to be very intentional. We have to be very deliberate, because change does not happen on its own. And it takes a whole lot of courage to step up, to continue the fight, even when a door has been shut in your face. It takes a whole lot of courage to show up when you're alone sometimes, it feels like. It takes a lot of courage to never give up. And I know we've all had a chance to watch Beto and his campaign, his heroic, historic campaign against Ted Cruz, might I add. I think that we were all inspired by it. It's why you all are in the room today. I think you all know the lessons that we have learned time and time again. That's why you're in the room today. We could be doing anything right now, but we're here organizing. We're here building collective power, and I just want to thank Beto O'Rourke for showing up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the heart of democracy, the swingiest of all swing states, the state that determines the president, a state that matters, a state we can never give up on. And you showed us, if we can get that far in Texas, we can hold the line here in Wisconsin. Everybody, give it up to Beto O'Rourke. Awesome job.
Thank you so much, yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it for Mandela. Talk about a true public leader. For our new chairman, Devin. For setting the agenda for 2025 and 2026. And thank you to each and every one of you for taking some time out of your Saturday to welcome a stranger from Texas. I'll tell you what, this is not my first time in Milwaukee, but I feel like I'm seeing this city with absolutely new eyes. We flew in last night. We were delayed out of El Paso on the tarmac for more than 2 hours, got into Dallas, had to find a seat on another flight that got us into Milwaukee a little after 10 or maybe just before 11. Got to bed late. I couldn't really appreciate the city in the dark. We were staying downtown, and I woke up this morning, and I put on my running shoes, and I headed out and ran along the Milwaukee River until it met the lake, and then along the lakefront past your extraordinary Museum of Art, which is just absolutely beautiful on the outside. I can imagine what it looks like on the inside. The weather, the temperature could not have been better. I didn't know it was because I was breathing in Canadian wildfire as I was running along the lake, but ignorance was bliss at the time, right? I was like, this is so awesome. That's right. We're staying downtown, as I mentioned, and as I was cooling down after my run, I was walking through downtown, and I walked to your city hall. And man, it is just astounding. They literally do not build things like that anymore in America. And so many American city halls of that era were razed and destroyed and replaced by glass and concrete and steel. The fact that you preserved it and that it's here and all this other amazing architecture, just absolutely mind-blowing. I go up to my room, I take a shower, I change. We put our stuff in the truck because we're going to be hitting the road after this town hall. But I wanted to take a moment to collect my thoughts and think through what it is that I wanted to say to you today before I have the chance to listen to you today. And so I found a little bench overlooking the Milwaukee River. And I'm like deep in thought, thinking through what I want to say. And below there are people who are kayaking. Maybe you've been in one of these plastic kayaks and you're paddling along. And there was a woman with her boyfriend or husband paddling along talking. And she looks up and she looks at me. And then she looks back at the water and then she looks back up at me again. And she says, are you Beto O'Rourke? And I said, yeah, I'm Beto. And she says, get the fuck out of here. Which I now have learned is welcome to our city in Milwaukee. That's how you all say it. In El Paso, it's a little different. We might say bienvenido, welcome. You guys say get the fuck out of here, but it means welcome. It means welcome. So thank you for that. Cynthia, as we were walking in, she said, promise me you won't cuss. And for the record, I didn't say that. She said it. I just repeated what she said, okay, Cynthia? The fact that we're all here today together is really impressive in and of its own right. We didn't check at the door your religion, your country of national origin, could care less about your race, your political affiliation. Hey, if you voted for Donald Trump in the last election, we're glad you came. If you voted for Kamala, the same invitation is open to you. If you didn't vote at all, even better, because we're here to listen and learn from you to give you a reason to cast that ballot in 2026. The fact that we're all here is just amazing. But I want you to know this, one more personal anecdote. I said this wasn't my first time in Milwaukee, but I also have a connection here. My great-great-grandmother, whose name was Elizabeth Catherine Fyans, Irish, was born in this city in 1863. Her parents, Edward Fyans and the mother was Mary McGrath, were both born in Ireland. And as you all probably know, in the 1840s and the 1850s, Ireland was undergoing a horrific starvation and famine. More than 1 million people in a country of 8 million people would lose their lives, would literally starve to death as part of the most powerful, the wealthiest empire that at that point the world had ever seen. 1 million more including my great-great-great-grandparents, would leave that island. They went from a little over 8 million people to 6 million people by the end of that famine. This country, the state of Wisconsin, the city of Milwaukee, was the one place that they could go to that would take them in and allow them not just to survive, but to thrive and to flourish. And Lizzie, as she was called, would get married in this city in 1887 to a son of immigrants from Germany, from Prussia at the time. His name was Leo Peel. And they would have my great-grandmother, Marguerite Peel, who was the mother of my grandmother, Charlotte, who moved to the Southwest, New Mexico, and then ultimately to El Paso, where she had my mom, and then my mom had me. So we're connected, El Paso and Milwaukee, in these ways, genealogically, familially, culturally. But we have to admit that as a country right now, we have never been more divided. We've never been more polarized. We've never had more millions of our fellow Americans who feel more isolated and alone and literally estranged from the very promise and hope of America. Strangers in this own land of theirs. They may have been born here. They may be 4 generations. They may be 5 generations. They may have come here 5 months ago, but they don't feel a part of it, and they do not feel together. So the very act of coming together, regardless of differences, is powerful in and of itself. But it causes me, as I was thinking, looking down at the Milwaukee River this morning, it causes me to wonder just who we are at the end of the day. What does it mean to be American? What is America that so many people feel disconnected from today? Certainly it is more than race or country of national origin. I mentioned my family. Your family has their own stories. We're a people literally of the planet. As John Lewis would say, we each came here in a different ship. I mean, maybe you crossed the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago. Maybe you were brought in the hold of a ship kidnapped from Africa, brought here to build literally the wealth and the success and the strength of this country, though you would never be able to enjoy in the proceeds and the profit from it. Maybe you're like my family. You fled starvation and persecution and certain death, but you're here. Each of us in a different ship, John Lewis would say, but now we're all in the same boat. I would say more than race, more than country of national origin, maybe even more than geography, the size of this country or the contours of its border. Think about it. We were America when we were 13 colonies. We were America when we were 50 states. It's something about America that transcends all of those things. And so here's my theory. This is my position that I want to share with you and get your reaction from. I think that America is this revolutionary idea. So bold, so profound, so rare in the entirety of human history, so exceedingly exceptional on the planet back when it started and even today, that all of us essentially are the same. That whatever differences there are between us, we are the same. All of us created equal. Literally, the foundational document of this country set down 249 years ago last month in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, the great promise, the great hope of this country is that we'd actually fulfill that idea and how we treat one another. And I mark the progress of America by our ability to realize that expectation, this idea that if we're all created equally, if we're all essentially the same, then we should expect to be treated the same under the laws of this country. No one's going to be above it. No one's going to be below it. There are no kings. There are no lords. There is no nobility in this country. It's a government of, by, and for the people. To prove it, we fought for our freedom to never again be ruled by kings right at the outset of our country. To prove it again, not even 90 years later, we fought those who presumed that they could own another American. They could, in Lincoln's words, wring their bread from the sweat of another man's face. And we won that. We took this fight across the Atlantic. We took it across the Pacific against fascist dictators and tyrants to make sure that we and our allies could be free abroad and we could be free here at home, and not even a generation later, peacefully, non-violently, but nonetheless powerfully, everyday Americans won the full civil and political rights for each and every single one of us, man and woman, black and white, immigrant and native-born alike. It is one of the most profound achievements of humanity anywhere, and it happened right here in the United States of America. Something to be proud of, right? That's who we are. That I would argue, is America more than anything else. But we have to admit that that very idea, that concept, if you agree with me that that is what America is today, is being destroyed by literally the most powerful people in this country, bar none. They would, through an act of betrayal, sacrifice what Lincoln called the last best hope of earth. This profound affirmation and faith in humanity. It's amazing, and we might very well lose it. And of course, all of us together agree we've got to fight, right? But let's also agree on this, that hope and that promise long ago stopped being realized. It wasn't just within the Trump administration. Long before that, under Democratic and Republican presidents alike, more and more of our fellow Americans no longer saw a future for themselves in this country, no longer felt like they were created or treated equally under the laws of this country. I mean, when one man can spend $25 million in this state to try to purchase the outcome of a Supreme Court election, or $300 million to choose their preferred candidate for the presidency of the United States, is that everyone under the law being treated equally, one person, one vote? Absolutely not. So we must also fight to build an America that is worth saving. These fights are important, and you would not be here if you weren't a fighter. But I ask you this: what if all of this that I just described, 249 years in, is over before the fight has truly begun? From the moment he was appointed chancellor in January of 1933, it took Adolf Hitler 53 days to destroy German democracy. And at every single turn in those just 53 days, the German press, the German public, the German politicians did far too little, too late. In 53 days, he went from this buffoonish thug who could barely hold power to the undisputed master and ultimately dictator of the German people. 53 days. In the last 6 months, since Donald Trump was sworn in as the President of the United States of America, he has defied the co-equal federal courts. He has dismantled congressionally chartered and mandated agencies and programs, another co-equal branch of government. He has colluded with corrupt public officials, and he has sought at every turn to dismantle the democracy that's kept us a free people for these 249 years and counting. And now he wants to grab even more power. In my home state of Texas, he's ordered our governor, Greg Abbott, and the Republican majority state legislature to give him 5 more seats in Congress. Because he knows that without these 5 seats, there is no way that he can maintain his purchase on power, that slim majority that he holds in the United States House of Representatives. His policies, cutting millions from Medicaid, transferring trillions of dollars of this country's wealth to the richest people on the planet, bar none, the 1% in America, terrorizing with Gestapo tactics our hardworking friends and family, the people who are literally building this country brick by brick right now. None of that stuff is popular. None of that stuff will allow them to hold the majority in the House of Representatives, so they seek to steal these 5 seats. And thick as thieves, the Republicans in Texas collude with him right now. The Committee on Redistricting in Texas just adopted those maps at the end of this week. It now goes before the full state legislature. Now, I want to make the case to you that if we fail, this is not a problem for the state and people of Texas, This is a problem for you here in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin. It is a problem for each and every single one of the 330 million Americans who have something to fight and to live for and to lose if we fail in this great test of our times. What does it mean if we come up short? It means more masked, plainclothes federal agents without warrants or badges, sweeping fellow Americans up off the street without due process or trial, to be deported without any defense to a gulag from which they will never, ever emerge. We might never even know their names. It means more of Trump's political opponents will be subject and targeted to persecution and retribution, and yes, you know it all too well, even to violence. And rest assured, it means that a Republican majority House will roll out the royal red carpet for Donald Trump's third term in office. In a country that established its independence from kings in the first place. And so you say, I've got to fight back. But I say this, what if we did something more than simply reacting or responding or resisting? There was a resistance in Germany after Hitler became chancellor. There was a resistance in Poland after the Nazis invaded. There was a resistance in France as well. The resistance, I'm afraid, as heroic as those people were, and they were, is too little and too late. Instead of fighting back, I encourage us to think about fighting forward, fighting through this, and fighting first. Like a boxer who's going to get off the back foot and onto the front one, who's going to go from defense to offense, who's going to take this fight to them in every single county in Wisconsin, in every state in the union. Instead of awaiting the punch to be thrown by these would-be fascists, we throw our punch first, and we throw our punch harder. And what that means for us today is that if these state house Democrats in Texas leave our state to break quorum, to deny their colleagues the numbers necessary to certify these maps and have the election stolen for and against all of us, they're going to need our support financially. They're going to need our encouragement, and they're going to need the moral support as we explain to our friends and family just what this fight means to each and every single one of us. It means that in those states, unlike Wisconsin and Texas, but where Democrats hold the governor's mansion and the state assembly and the state senate, that we seize the initiative. We don't wait for Texas to act first. We redraw those congressional districts to Democratic advantage. Do you ever feel, for those of you who are Democrats, that we are playing in a basketball game and the refs have stopped calling any of the fouls, and the other side's like punching us in the face and then dunking over our heads, and we're like, hey, ref, and there is no ref. And we throw our hands up to the crowd and we say, hey, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here in Texas? And the crowd's like, yeah, but what are you going to do about it? We need to punch them back. We need to punch them first. We need to fight with the rules that we have right now. No one likes gerrymandering. No one likes what's going on. But you'll like it even less if this consolidation of authoritarian power takes hold, because once it does, it is pretty damn hard to get out from under it. In Wisconsin, it means that we fight on every front. Our new chairman has said we can pick up perhaps 2 congressional seats in this state, maybe 3. We've got a candidate for the 5th congressional district who's here with us right now. We want to make sure that we are fighting on every front. Concede nothing to no one. Reach out and register every voter. If you are not yet volunteering with Power to the Polls, they're right there in the back corner. Please raise your hand. Sign up with them right now to make sure they have the resources and the volunteers necessary to win this fight. Thank you for what you all are doing. But in addition to all of this, and to sounding the alarm to one another, I think we also have to reckon with that issue that I brought up at the beginning. Yes, Trump and those in power are trying to destroy this country. But we also have to acknowledge that previous to Trump, there were far too many of our fellow Americans for whom this country was not working. So no longer must we say that we want to restore something or save something that wasn't working. We want to build something that is worth saving in the first place in America, right? Today, we don't have a true and real democracy. Not when people can stay in office for the rest of their natural lives. Not when corporations are people and money is speech, and corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money to purchase the outcomes of elections and the direction of our public policy. We need to replace all of that. I'd love to see Citizens United overturned. I'd love to see the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed by Congress. I'd love to see term limits for every office holder at every level of government. I'd love to see big money out of our politics, and I'd love to see ultimately, once Democrats finally learn how to fight and hold power, to change this system so that politicians can no longer choose their own voters, but it is always voters choosing their elected leaders, right? That's where we got to be. But we have no hope. We have no hope of building that political democracy if we don't also have an economic one. Think about this. If people cannot get what they need from a government of the many, pretty soon they're open to getting what they need from a government of the few, or a government even of only one. I was just talking to folks who are behind the new Wisconsin idea, building upon the extraordinary progressive legacy of this state that inspired Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the midst of the Great Depression to recharge, re-energize, and renew the promise here in America. What does that look like for our fellow Americans today? It means that we should be able to guarantee that you work just one job, and that's enough to sustain you and your family. We should be able to guarantee that you can see a doctor when you're sick, before you're sick, and so that you don't get sick in the first place. How about we guarantee access to fresh and healthy food, time and space to exercise, time with your loved ones, your kids, the stuff that makes life worth living in the first place. We guarantee that you should be able to buy a home. And how about this? Thinking about Mandela's parents, what if we guarantee that you can afford to teach school in the state of Wisconsin going forward? I would love more teachers stepping up to this kind of public service. Imagine an America that does not just that, but also truly stands for the human rights of each and every single one of us. You see what they're trying to do right now? It's a strategy old as time. They're trying to divide us by our differences and distract us. As they target the trans kid or the trans American, you stand right by that trans kid and that trans American. Make sure they know that we've got their backs. As they target these DEI programs, you say, we stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion everywhere, no matter where. And not just at home, but abroad as well. What if, imagine this, America no longer complicit in the bombing and the starving and the slaughtering of innocent children in Gaza, and instead, we use the awesome power of this country to help establish an independent, sovereign state for the Palestinian people. And we work to guarantee the safety and security of every Palestinian, every Israeli, every person in that region, convening the nations of the Middle East and the planet, if necessary, to get it done. And then imagine bringing those same values back home and no longer fearing that our loved ones or family members are going to be swept up off the streets in these Gestapo tactics that we're seeing in Wisconsin, in Texas, everywhere here today, because we recommit ourselves to the Constitution, to every right and protection contained therein, like due process, the ability to mount a defense, to have the facts before you, before you're imprisoned or arrested or sent to some other country from which you will never return. And if we double down on the use of power by Democrats who, in my reading for far too long, have cared more about being right than being in power, while the other side cares more about being in power than anything at all, including being right or being moral or being legal or being ethical. What if we actually use the power that voters give us, as they did in 2008 and as they did in 2020, and instead of talking the game, we walk the walk and actually rewrite our immigration laws this time in our own image, reflecting our own values, Every dreamer, legal for life. Every dreamer's parents, legal for life. Every hardworking American doing backbreaking work to make this country great, legal for life, doing even more as full U.S. citizens. Because most all of us, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of where our families came from, are on the same page on this issue. We want to make sure we know who's coming into this country. We want us all to be safe from anybody who would do us harm, whether they were born here or somewhere else. But lest you labor under the illusion, no immigrant has ever taken anything from any of you. They have given far more than they will ever be able to draw down from this country. It's another attempt to distract and to divide America. That's what we've got to do in conversations like this, is imagine a future for this country that is worth fighting for. And then to hold one another to account for actually being in that fight right now in 2025 and not waiting until 2026 or, God forbid, 2028, if there even is going to be a 2028. I'll leave you with this before we get a chance to listen to folks. There are some among you, and I have these days myself, who wonder whether any and certainly all of this that I'm just describing is possible. And I get that. I have my moments of doubt as well. But I want to bring you back to the beginning. These 249 years that have flowed into this moment at the beginning of August 2025, every major challenge that we have faced, we have overcome, and we've overcome it together. The British Empire, the Confederacy, the divisions of Hitler's Third Reich, the armed and elected thugs of Jim Crow South. At every single turn, America stood up to be counted and ultimately overcame the challenge. Now you and me, we're the heirs of all that service, all that struggle, and all that sacrifice. And what we do with this great inheritance now at this moment of truth is going to define us in the eyes of history and will determine what is possible for this country. So no pressure, Milwaukee. But this one comes down to us right now. We cannot be those who Lincoln warned about that might meanly lose this last great hope. We have to be the ones who nobly save it. Are you with me? All right. Are we ready to fight? Thank you for coming out here today. Cynthia Cano's got the other microphone. And I've asked Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes to answer questions with me. You are welcome to pose a question. Both of us, either of us, are welcome or happy to answer them. But even better, I just gave you my dream, my idea, my vision. I would love to hear yours. What's on your mind? What you've come up with? How you think we can inspire our fellow Americans to fight for, build a country that is worth saving. So if you'll raise your hand and catch Cynthia's attention, she's got the white shirt and the blue cap, and true to form, the first microphone goes to a Packers fan. Here we go.
A couple things. Given Trump's response after he got shot where he said, fight, 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 I think Democrats need to move away from that metaphor. Maybe it's work, something like that. The other thing, as I look around, I don't see many young people. I know it's a big ask on a day like today, not their thing. What ideas do you guys have for getting them interested, getting them engaged, getting them convinced and committed to the Democratic ideas?
Yeah. Thanks for this great question. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to give Mandela the mic to answer it. Maybe billing it as come to the Milwaukee Senior Center was the wrong move for these young people. We're going to get it better next time. Everyone who's here should be here. We're grateful that you're here, but excellent point. The room does not fully reflect the community, and we just got to continue to work on this. This is one meeting. Think of this as a first step, a start. Each and every one of us, incumbent upon us to bring others into this conversation, everybody represented, everybody heard, to show you how powerful this stuff is. And I bet you Mandela has a similar story. When I was running against Ted Cruz, and I thought about not saying his name because I know he provokes a reaction. I'm sorry about that, folks. When I was running against Cruz, there was a debate within our campaign. The really smart, wizards of campaign tactics said, look, Beto, I know you like to be with young people. The energy, the urgency is there, but the votes never show up. And so we've got limited resources and limited time. If you're to win, you'll be the first in 30 years who is going to defeat a Republican for the U.S. Senate. We've got to play our cards perfectly. This isn't a smart move. And my response to that was, look, I get it. You know, the facts are pretty clear on this. The logic is almost inescapable, but I might not vote either if no one had bothered to show up and listen to and be with and follow my lead in this fight. And so we went to every single college campus in the state of Texas. We went to many senior high school campuses across the state of Texas. You could not be too red or too rural for us to show up and write you off. You couldn't be too big or too blue for us to take you for granted, right? We're going to show up for everyone. At the end of the day, we got pretty damn close, you know how this feels, to defeating Ted Cruz. We helped 12 insurgent state House Democratic candidates defeat 12 incumbent Republicans, 2 new members of Congress, 17 black women won election to judicial positions in Harris County alone. It was transformative. And you know who led that? Young voter turnout in 2018 was up 518% from the previous midterm. So showing up for young people works. And whether we say we're going to work with them, we're going to fight right alongside them, to your point about the metaphor that we choose to use, whatever language feels comfortable to you, use it. It just has to be honest, it has to be authentic, and it has to be real. And we have to bring every single person we can into this, the broadest possible coalition, the most united front in American history. Mandela, would you like to answer?
Sure, yes. Thank you for that. And I'll say it requires showing up. And one caveat, too, is we get so few days of summer here in Wisconsin. We can't blame young people for enjoying the summer. But I will say, in 22, we had the highest youth voter turnout in the entire country. And that's something we should all be proud of. And as important as it is to invite people to us, as you mentioned, we have to go out and talk to people. I would always answer the question, how do we get young people to show up? How do we get people of color to show up? And it's like, well, you know, maybe we should talk to them. Take a moment to have the conversation. And young people are not going to show up for candidates that they don't believe in. They're not going to show up for a party that they don't believe in. They aren't going to show up if they don't believe that people are on the right side of history. And we're having a tough time making that argument right now. As we see the threat of AI totally threaten the job prospects of Gen Z, Gen Alpha. And look, I know that there are opportunities for us all to work with artificial intelligence to improve our own lives, to make things better, but at the same time, we cannot allow it to be another tool to make billionaires more and more money. And young people see straight through that. So as we navigate a changing set of circumstances in this country and across this world, young people have to be a part of that conversation because their future is quite frankly in jeopardy when they see their funding being cut again for higher education, but at the same time, as you mentioned, money being sent to foreign wars, to bomb children. They have a hard time grappling with the fact that this is who they're casting a vote for. They know how powerful their vote is. Politicians don't truly understand how powerful the youth vote is, but I believe in the youth vote, and I believe that it's important to show up on campuses, in high schools, and importantly in communities as well, because every young voter isn't in college. We got a lot of young folks who've gone straight to the workforce, and they've been totally ignored. They have not seen wages keep up with inflation. It is almost impossible for them to buy a house. So until we start talking about truly a pathway to realizing the American dream, to be able to own a house, to start a family, to do all the things that their parents did, that their grandparents did, that they feel they have no access to, then we're going to have a hard time. So let's make Wisconsin a place where you can truly live and thrive. That means giving the opportunity for a person to get a good paying job. Our minimum wage is still $7.25. $7.25. It is insane for a person to say, well, minimum wage has been this low for so long. Why hasn't it increased regardless of who's been in power? So if you see your life never improving regardless of who's in office, it's going to be tough for you to show up and to get out of bed and cast a ballot when you feel that things are going to be the same regardless who. So when people are running for office, regardless of what that office is, it could be school board, it could be governor, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what generation you are, you need to ask them how they're going to approach the issues for the next generation, the issues of the future that are going to determine whether not Wisconsin is a leader.
Awesome. Thank you.
Here we go. So I have a question for each of you. and I also have a comment, okay? This room is majority white. I'm going to just be real honest. It is not my people's problem to educate your people on their ignorance. That's the first thing. When I say that, I say stop pretending our history was not BS, because it was, and have a conversation with your relatives about their foolishness, okay? The 92%, we voted right. The 84% voted correctly. It is up to you all, as white Americans, to have conversation with your people. That's my comment. My second thing is, Mandela, what are you going to do to get these kids out here to vote? You just made a comment about the working class kids being overlooked. What are we doing in Milwaukee to do something? Also, Beto, how much longer do y'all have to deal with Hot Wheels? Because I'm over him. I just left Texas in August after living there for 12 years. He was one of the reasons I left, because I'm sick of him. So I have those two questions. My comment, if I offended anyone, I'm sorry. I don't care. That's the reality.
Thank you so much for that question. Is, again, what I've been up to last couple years, last 2.5 years, of Power to the Polls. We have worked day in and day out to increase voter turnout. In 24, Milwaukee had the highest voter turnout or the 50 largest cities in the entire country. We also had the least significant swing towards Donald Trump relative to other major cities in swing states, your Detroit, your Phoenix, your Phillies. And we also improved voter turnout, where other cities that were similar to ours decreased in voter turnout. And that was powered by organizations like Power to the Polls, but also the young people that we talked to along the way. So I've been working hard, raising money. In 24, we ran an $8.5 million program specifically targeted at those folks who don't always show up as regularly as we would want them to. And I said, you can't just knock on the door and expect people to turn up. Of course, it helps. But it's more than that. We run a year-round program. We don't just show up 60 to 90 days before an election. We run a year-round program. We talk to people day in and day out. If it weren't for this town hall meeting right now, they'd be out knocking on doors. So it's important to keep up that level of communication. Again, it's creating that mechanism for voter education. That's what we intend to keep doing. Oh, the table is right there. We waiting on you. Matter of fact, somebody walk a clipboard over to her. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. And just real briefly, and then Cynthia, we're ready for the next one. But to your question about Texas, similar, we have a group called Powered by People. We didn't really coordinate on the names, but that's just where we're coming from. But Texas is the toughest state in the nation in which to cast a ballot. It is the toughest state in the nation in which to register to vote. No online voting in the year, no online registration in the year of our Lord 2025. No automatic registration, no same-day registration. You have to, imagine you're 18 years old, you have to print out a form, if you have a printer. You have to fill it out correctly. You have to have the appropriate form of ID. You then need to put it into an envelope. What 18-year-old knows what that or a stamp is, right? Then you need to send it into the county courthouse, or you need to go meet the county registrar in person and get registered there. No wonder, to this excellent point made in the question, no wonder young people have a hard time voting. It's not that they're lazy. They don't lack any love for this great democracy. It's not that they don't care about the issues before us. Of course they do, probably more than anybody else, because they have to live with it longer than anybody else here in this room. It's just that we make it so damn hard for them to participate in our politics. So our group, like yours, reaches out in person to register young voters where they are. And then, this is important and unique in what we're doing with Powered by People. We keep a personal relationship with each and every voter. We don't give their contact info to the Senate campaign or the Democratic Party, the state of Texas, or anybody else. The person who registers you will text you in 30 days and say, hey, Joe, did you get your voter registration card in the mail from the Secretary of State? If not, let me help you track that down. Hey, Joe, do you have the right form of voter ID? This is what it takes to legally vote in the state of Texas. Joe, this is when early voting starts. Here's your nearest polling location. And because we are a partisan organization, we also say, hey, Joe, here are the candidates that align with your values. We sure hope that you can get out. Young voter turnout, 18 years old to 29 years old in America in 2024 was 42%. Texas always performs below the average. Average in America, 42%. Those that we worked with and Powered by People turned out at 79% in the 2024 election. So this stuff works, but it's hard work. So thank you for volunteering.
Okay, I'd like to first recognize the former mayor of Milwaukee, Tom Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. Awesome. Thank you. That's great.
Here's our next question.
Ooh, I come here today with a lot of anger now. Hi, Mr. Barrett. We love our officials here in Wisconsin. When I think of a Democratic Party, it's like you're kind of speaking on fighting and throwing the first punch and all that. We're Democrats. We have a saying in our city where, we come to scrap. We're hard workers, we're non-workers, we're street hustlers, we work 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs, we get along as people, and it's just like, how is it that we have these representatives that don't know how to throw a punch? So it's like, did you guys come from us? And it's almost like the Democratic Party is kind of falling for this hokey doke where you're kind of like starting to divide us during this last election. All I heard, I cringed every time I heard someone make speeches about bringing up the middle class or bringing up women. Well, I'm a Democrat and have been and will always be, but I don't want to get there without my men folk. I do not want to get there without you, my young people. I do not want to get there without all of us, but I believe that in that last election, we caused our own problem. There was a division. It's like I cringed every time I heard someone say, we are going to bring up middle class. We are going to support women. Well, Democrats come in all sorts of colors. We are poor people, and the majority are poor. We are middle class. We are hard workers. We are drug dealers. We are everybody. And so if you want to talk inclusion, you need to figure out if you want us to come to your house, you need to make all of us feel as one, because we came in half-stepping. The Republican Party, for whatever those weird reasons, they were together and they whooped our ass. And I hope that I do not have to sit and watch another coverage where they're giggling and smiling and we are just look defeated. Because we're fighters. So who do you represent?
I love that. Thank you. I'm afraid I could only diminish the power of what you said by trying to respond. So let me say this. I agree with each and everything that you said. It has to be all of us. And I talked about how so many no longer find a future for themselves, or even worse, for their kids in America going forward, and has left them estranged and alienated and disconnected from their fellow citizens, from their fellow Americans. The same is true within the Democratic Party, and I think made even worse, and this was not by intention, and it was a fault of the head and not of the heart in the last election, but all this talk about saving something that wasn't working for people, where folks did not feel included. A democracy, saving democracy, I mean, what kind of democracy did we have that you wanted to save? In Texas, we don't really have a democracy. I was asked about the governor earlier. The governor has no campaign contribution limits. He can take, as he did, a $6 million check from just one person who asks him to privatize public education, turn our tax dollars into vouchers, send money from our public schools to private schools, and absolutely destroy, as Mandela was saying earlier, that thing that informs the citizenry and provides the best defense against tyranny. That wasn't working for us. I don't want to save it. I want to build something anew, and everyone and every single one of us has to be part of it. Thank you for what you said. I'm glad that it's on the record because I want the rest of the country to see this as well. Gracias. Do you want to add anything?
And to your point, too, we are a big tent, as we know, represents so many different interests, so many different people, and at times that gets a little bit tough, but the beauty of it all is that we truly represent America. Our big tent is truly emblematic of what this country looks like, and when the other side says they love this country, it's a lie because they don't love everybody in this country. They love a revisionist history version of this country that is not truly who we are. We need to show people what America truly is because it's rooms just like this across the country.
I like it.
To your right. Keep going to your right.
Hi, Beto. Welcome to Wisconsin.
Are you going to tell me to get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, I'm not. Welcome. Take some cheese curds with you.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
So I couldn't agree more about the young vote. I have 2 millennial kids, one of which lives here in Milwaukee. Rode with you last weekend at the River West 24. So I see what's happening. I live in Waukesha County, one of the WOW counties. And are there more of us here? And there's an indoctrination going on in the public schools now. Turning Point USA has embedded itself in the club atmosphere at the high schools, which I feel is really dangerous because it's an indoctrination. It's almost like Hitler Youth in some respects. We also are home in Waukesha County to a classic education, a Hillsdale school, trying to poach kids out of our high school, which used to be one of the top in the state. It was Arrowhead, or it is Arrowhead. So how do we fight back against Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, because they're really targeting the young people, and they're targeting them real young, the Gen Alpha.
Thank you for being here, and thanks for bringing this up. You know, the parallels that you mentioned are the analogies of last resort, that we're, you know, it's the break glass moment. We're not supposed to use it until there is just no other alternative. We are, I agree with you, we are at that point right now. I mean, some of the things that our dear leader is saying, like, you remember him describing immigrants poisoning the blood of America? You could lift that line out of Mein Kampf, word for word, or out of the mouth directly of Adolf Hitler in some speech that he gave in 1930 or 1933. This destruction of the institutions and the levers of democracy by somebody who was elected, as Hitler was elected, into a position of power. It is chilling how tight the analogy is. If history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, it's really rhyming right now. And what's happening in our schools, you know, sometimes we think this is just chaos, and it's just that they hate education or they love private schools. They are purposefully trying to dumb down America. It's happening in our colleges. It is happening in our institutions of higher learning. It is happening in our high schools, our middle schools, and our grade schools. We talked about Governor Greg Abbott taking that $6 million check from these Christian nationalists, these fundamentalists who've just won a law in the state of Texas that mandates that every teacher post the 10 Commandments in their classroom. Under criminal penalty should they fail to do that. What are you trying to do? Indoctrination is exactly the right word. When I think about who we are, where we come from, and how we were established in 1776 going forward, it was exactly to escape that kind of tyranny. So you ask, what do we do? I tried to use the metaphor earlier of a basketball game where the refs have left the arena. We are in a street brawl right now. And if our side does not wake up to this, you know, our side, which is so confined and conformed to the rules and the regulations and what is right and what is wrong, and I get all that. I was raised that way as well by these folks descended from Milwaukee. But at this moment, we absolutely have to take the gloves off, or choose your metaphor if you'd like, because if we fail right now, look, this fight in our schools, and so let's show up in our schools, let's organize in our schools, because they're organizing in our schools right now. We can't just say, hey, it's wrong to politically organize in a public high school. It might be wrong, but the other side is politically organizing in a high school right now. We better sure as hell be organizing in that same high school, sharing our vision of this country. You can use or repeat some of what I just said about who we are, where we came from, what we're made of, what we can accomplish when we do this together for freedom and the idea that we're all created equal and should be treated equal under the law, or some other version of what America means to you. But we better share that with our kids, because if we don't, the other side is sharing a vision of America right now, and it is dark and is totally disconnected from how we were founded and the promise of who we are supposed to be. So look, it may be tough to fight right now, and no one, Mandela or myself, are going to promise you that it is easy. This is not something you do from your couch or in front of the TV. It is braving this Canadian wildfire-infested air, or the broiling sun in Texas, or the thugs who are out there, and they're out there, who are going to try to stop you from what you're doing. But how about those who were up against even greater odds in the march to civil and voting rights, who were lynched and lost their lives, beaten and brutalized and jailed, and yet they prevailed and came through and allowed us to achieve this victory. They didn't do it sitting at home. They didn't wait for the arc of the moral universe to just bend that way. They bent the shit out of it until it got to the right place. We have to do that now. Listen, if we don't fight in 2026, which is starting right now in 2025, and it's going to be a tough fight, and the odds are against us. Literally, the most powerful man on the planet, who is supported by the wealthiest man in the world. That's who we're up against right now, okay? So those are some odds. But the fight that follows this one, if we fail in 2026, if they consolidate authoritarian power, the fight in 2027 and 2028, your back may literally be up against the wall. You know that big, beautiful bill that added $4 trillion of debt, that transferred $1 trillion of wealth to the richest 1%? It also included this: tens of billions of dollars for new detention facilities to be managed by DHS. Ask yourself this. We are seeing the lowest levels of immigration in this country's history, bar none. Illegal immigration over our southern border is at its lowest point on record. We already have extraordinary detention capacity. Who are they building these cells for? Right now, it is not just Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. It is all over the country. The biggest one is being built right now in my hometown in El Paso, Texas, at Fort Bliss. You know, first, they came for the trade unions. And I wasn't a trade union member, so I didn't say shit. Then they came for the communists. I'm not a communist, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew, and I didn't say a word. And by the time they came for me, there was no one left to say a thing. Folks, we got to stand up right now. We got to be counted. We got to fight. In the schools, in the streets, in our communities, each and every one of us everywhere. Thank you for your question.
To your left, I'm to your left, right over here.
Got you.
Thank you for taking my question. I currently serve on the school board in Green Bay.
Yeah.
We just passed a budget in this state, and it is nothing but bad news for public education. But I'm mostly here to talk about vouchers. It's estimated that next year about $900 million are going to come out of our budget and go to schools that are not asked to play by the same rules as public schools. That's $900 million of your tax dollars going to schools that don't have to take all kids. They don't have elected school boards who answer to the public that elected them. You can't necessarily go to their meetings. You can't necessarily see who's, you have no control over that money. I've had to ask myself a lot lately, what is the future of public education in this state? But Texas is going through the same stuff. And I don't know. I'm asking you, what is the future of public education in this country when that money is being pulled out of our public schools bit by bit by bit? We're scared. I don't know how we're going to give our teachers just a cost of living increase. Not a raise, just cost of living. And we want to. We want to pay them what they're worth. Yeah. Let's pay them what they're worth, but we are restricted by revenue caps. Green Bay, when those revenue caps are put on in the 90s, we were a conservative, low-spending district, and ever since then, we have been pushing against that revenue limit. We have to go to referendum. We've passed 3 referendums in 8 years. We're going to have to go again next year and ask the people in Green Bay to please fund our schools because the state legislature will not do it. So luckily in Green Bay, we're holding up our piece of the sky. But at some point, people are going to wake up and go, wait a minute. Why do we have to go to referendum every 2 years? Let's just fund our schools. So what is the future of public education in this country?
So
I want to first thank you for your service on the school board. I want to thank all the teachers who are here today. I cannot tell you how frustrating the fight was in the legislature as we continue, or not we, as the legislature continued to expand vouchers at the expense of our public schools. And it's tough. And every time a school district goes to referendum, it makes it that much more difficult for the next one to pass. And we shouldn't even be in that. We have a surplus in this state. Let's mind you, the money is there. The money is there. They're just spending it wrong. The money is being spent on tax breaks for the most wealthy people in this state. The money is being spent on bringing companies that do more harm than good to the people of Wisconsin. So it's very frustrating when you see money going to a lot of religious extremists out there who want to take over our public schools, or who have already done it as they're trying to in Texas. This is almost a 40-year-old experiment that has largely failed most of our students. Now, the reality is none of that changes until after the midterm. The one thing we do have hope and optimism for is an entirely new legislature. We have different maps. There's a chance we flip the state Senate, and a really good chance. But if we fight like hell, for everybody who questions why we have to go to referendum all across this state, because every year it's a historic number of referenda questions, if we talk to those people, the people who are on the fence, the people who say, I'm not giving more money, I'm not going to increase my own taxes to pay for these schools, why does the state? We need to have a real and honest dialogue with them and say the reason we're asking you this question is because your state representative has failed you. It's because your state representative has given more money to private schools than public schools. This is an organizing opportunity for us, and we need to take advantage of it going into the midterm, because everyone who voted for these increases to voucher funding needs to be held accountable. And in a year like 2026, where the win could be at ourselves, I'm not willing to just say it is at ourselves just yet, but it could very well be at ourselves if we handle this situation right. And it means having that real dialogue with people. It means putting people front and center and say, why have you failed our students? Why have you failed our community? Why have you let schools are closing all across? It is heartbreaking. I'm a very proud public school graduate, and I have always committed and dedicated myself to fighting for public education, make sure that the same opportunities that were afforded to me are afforded to the next generation, at least the same opportunities. Let me be very clear, too. Milwaukee public schools is where I come from. One of the most maligned school districts in the entire state, if not the entire country. And I can tell you, so many people I went to school with didn't have nearly the amount of resources that I had. I was very fortunate to never have to worry about where my next meal was going to come from. I was very fortunate to not ever have to worry about if we were going to get evicted. But that's not the reality, because we have poverty rates that are increasing across this country as well. We have issues of lack of, again, access to health care, all these other challenges that our students are dealing with, and we're expecting them to learn at the same rate as a student who has every resource afforded to them. It's just not fair. We are not on level playing field, and until we get to that point where every child has exactly what they need to succeed before they get to the classroom, we're going to be in trouble. And it also goes back to those representatives who failed them, because they're also voting to cut Badger Care. They're voting to cut SNAP benefits. They're voting against everything that would give them a decent quality of life. So when you see them, ask the question. Also, organize people around this issue when we have those conversations, because nobody wants to go to referendum again, but they need to know why they're going to referendum. It's because their Republican legislator has failed them.
That's great. Great. Thank you for this question, and I also want to add my gratitude to everyone who's involved in public education at every level: teacher, speech therapist, janitor, cafeteria, school bus driver. All of you make all of us possible. We're products of this. This country would not be the place that it is without it. But I'm always astounded when I'm at an event like this, and there is a young person who comes up at the end, and she says, hey, I'm graduating from the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm getting my master's in education. I'm going to be a school teacher. What are you thinking? I think. I mean, I'm so grateful for it, but do you know what you're getting into? On average, a school teacher in Texas works not one, but 2 or 3 jobs for the privilege of unlocking this lifelong love of learning in my kids' heads. All 3 of my kids are in public schools in El Paso right now. It's amazing that you're willing to do this on something that you literally cannot survive on. One of the hardest jobs that I could ever imagine doing. Probably one of the most essential, if not the most essential jobs in our communities. In Texas, we lead the nation in school shootings. 3 years after 19 kids and these 2 heroic teachers were slaughtered at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, not a single thing has changed. Not a single measure passed or signed into law by the state legislature and the governor that would make it any less likely that any other child meet the same fate as those 19 or those 2 teachers. Kids who, as you know, could only be identified by the shoes that they were wearing because their bodies and faces were so badly disfigured by the high-impact, high-velocity round shot by an AR-15, legally purchased, by the way, in the state of Texas. Someone who bought not 1, but 2 and hundreds of rounds of ammunition on the day that he turned 18 fucking years old. That is what you face as a teacher. Not only are you going to give the best years of your life, sacrifice them for these kids, you might very well have to sacrifice your life. And now, in addition, y además, we're going to add this injustice to the indignity. In a state of 254 counties, more than 150 of them do not even have a private school to which you could send your child. If you could bridge the difference between the voucher and the actual tuition at a private school, the vast majority, I bet this is true in Wisconsin, it's going to be true in Texas, the vast majority of those voucher dollars flow to families who are already sending their children to private schools. Over the last 50 years in this country, under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, more than $50 trillion with a T has flowed from working Americans, from lower income and middle income Americans, to the wealthiest people in this country. $50 trillion over the last 5 decades. How does it happen? It happens with things like this voucher scheme that drains public resources, our tax dollars, away from our kids and to folks who are already wealthy and doing well so that they, not the rest of us, can do even better. What's the answer? Well, to pick up on what Mandela said, as I traveled to each one of the 254 counties of Texas, to those remote, rural, red counties, shining so brightly red that you can see them as you orbit outer space, as you orbit the planet, just like pillar of red light coming up from Abilene, Texas. Folks are pissed off, and in fact, they tried this voucher scheme in the legislative session in 2023, and it failed not just because of Democrats, although Democrats were united on this issue, but rural representing Republicans said, hell no, I'm not going to let you do this to my teachers, to my school, the largest employer in my county, the source of pride, Friday Night Lights, which you all probably know about in Texas. You're not going to do this. So the governor and these billionaire Christian nationalist backers literally bought them out of their seats, raised the money to primary them with pro-voucher Republicans. Now, they were able to get it passed in 2025. It is now the law of the land in Texas, as it is here in Wisconsin. But again, to what Mandela said, there has to be a political price paid for this. But we're going to have to change our game as Democrats. To your excellent point earlier, that we're brawlers, that we are going to do whatever it takes. We've got to fight on every front. And in these remote, rural, red counties in Texas, I don't know what it's like in Wisconsin, we're not fielding Democratic candidates. We fear to tread. And so those folks go effectively and literally unrepresented, because if Democrats aren't on the ballot in November, then Republicans don't have a fight. They don't have to be accountable. There's nothing that they have to defend. There's no price for them to pay. If we start fielding Democrats in these rural counties, and they run on public education and nothing else. I mean, they can run on anything else they want, but if they run on that and nothing else, we're going to start winning elections. They'll pay a political price. We can restore funding for our local schools, and we can end this voucher scam in Texas, and let's end it here in Wisconsin as well. Let's get to the backs of these teachers.
Do you want to step over here? And I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but we only have time for 2 more.
I want to thank Beto for showing up. You're a great man, and the reason you're a great man is because you show up and you listen, and not enough people do that. Now, you inspired me I don't know if you remember me, but I was in Maryland at your town hall in Maryland. Yes. You inspired me to fly out here for this town hall to represent all of the Democrats in Maryland.
I love this.
Now you may not realize it. You may not realize it, but the highest percentage of registered Democrats is in the state of Maryland. The biggest number of Democrats is in the state of California. We have all these Democratic warriors who are ready to fight. You're lucky. You're in a border state where you gotta fight, and you have a fight to make. But in Maryland, I went to my representatives. I said, "Oh, come on, they're already on my side, right? What am I going to do?" So what we need is a national campaign that will include all of those Democrats who live in those blue states. We need to be engaged. We need to be able to donate. We need to make a change, just like every other movement that's thrown over a dictator, whether it was in the Ukraine, whether it was in Poland, whether it was in Czechoslovakia. We can do it, but it has to be a huge, huge effort that includes not just Democrats, everyone who wants to fight against this dictatorship. So I just want to encourage everybody to think about what is the plan. We can't have 3.5 more years of Donald Trump. We cannot survive it. The planet will not survive it. The EPA just said that they are getting rid of all restraints on climate warming gases, right? Our planet is going to survive with that policy for 3.5 more years? No. We need a big movement. We need a massive movement. And we need to overturn it sooner than 4 years. We need to overturn it in 2 years. And it means getting rid of Trump in 2 years. Not just getting the legislature. If we get the House of Representatives, he'll ignore the House of Representatives. My senator, Van Hollen, who's a great senator, love him, he said, well, we'll go to court and stop these guys. How is that working out? It's not, right? So we need to make this national effort, a huge effort, get every Democrat everywhere in our country involved. I'll travel around the country. There's nothing more important in my life, besides my family, than stopping Trumpism.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. I like that spirit. You know, what is a Texan doing in Wisconsin? What is someone from Maryland doing coming to Milwaukee? How are we going to get Mandela Barnes down to El Paso? I mean, we are all in this together, right? I think there's a Ben Franklin quote, either we hang together or we swing alone, right? That's when they were up against the mightiest, most powerful empire on the planet. And they overcame them through their unity, through sticking together, right? That is our greatest power right now. That's why we're all here together at this moment. And again, this has to be but one step. All of us convening in our neighborhoods, at our workplaces, in our schools, those who need to be part of this fight at every single turn, in every place, in every county, and in every state. Thank you for being here. Thanks for making the trip. Appreciate you.
This is our last question.
Thanks for coming. First of all, to everybody who is asking about how do we get kids involved, I'm a teacher. I teach at Milwaukee Public Schools High School. Reach out to your high schools because we each have a voting champion. I need help. I have to get these kids registered. Go to Vote Riders, go to Souls to the Polls, go to League of Women Voters. We need help. That being said, I'm a historian and I'm a history teacher, so I don't get anywhere without my notes. I'm a mom of 4, I'm a public educator, and right now I am in the heart of my master's. I am 65 pages in on Sesame Street and the development of public broadcasting. So I've had to revisit it in ways you can't imagine in the last week. So when we look at this and when we consider the original vision that the Carnegie Commission had, the way Johnson morphed it, the way Nixon morphed it, now it's gone. Those are the entities that absolutely help my kids. I have 175 kids prepare for school. Now that it's gone, what are we going to do to protect public broadcasting, public media? We don't have that funding.
Thank you for your service to the community, to our country, as a public educator. Thank you for asking this question. What year were you born? Mandel's a little bit younger than I am. He's born in 86. I was born in 1972. And you're 75. So I remember I was living, it was the second house that we lived in El Paso. It was Paseo Redondo Street. And I don't know if I was 5 or 6 or 7 years old. And my dad rushed into the house, turned on the TV, switched it to channel 13, KCOS in El Paso, and there were these talking Muppets on the TV. It was Sesame Street, and he was so excited. I was completely blown away and watched it religiously growing up. And it wasn't just Sesame Street, it was every other program that I learned. Watching the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour with my dad every night. I don't know if any of you old-timers remember that as well. Yeah, you were born in 75. This amazing 1-hour broadcast where you weren't expected to digest an issue in a 30-second soundbite, but you could have subject matter experts intelligently describe why a certain policy was being debated or adopted or what it would mean for this country. I grew so much and I learned so much, as did tens of millions, countless other Americans. In these rural communities that we keep talking about, in Wisconsin, in Texas, in Alaska, thank you, Murkowski. Yeah. Did you guys see this? She voted for the bill that cuts the Corporation for Public Broadcasting so that they're zeroed out, and is now posting on social media that we got to get this back. Who are you kidding, right? But for her constituents in Alaska, and this is the pressure she's feeling, this might be the only source of news. This might be the only community, no matter how isolated you are. This might be your only source of comfort, and now it is gone. CPB going out of business, bankrupt, done, finito. What do we do about it? When I turned on KTEP, our local NPR station, yesterday, there was a message from one of the hosts, and it said, look, we're up shit creek, but there's no more money coming in from the federal government. That blows, I forget what it is, a $200,000 hole into our budget. We're not going to be able to keep beaming out this signal unless you chip in. And so, Amy and I, back home in El Paso, we've got to go send in our donation, ask how much more we can give. In the short term, I think that is the only way through this. In the long term, similar to the answer to the question on public education, we've got to be ruthless about winning political power in this country and then using it aggressively to restore those things that have been decimated or destroyed, like CPB, NPR, and PBS. And in addition, we've got to build this stuff back stronger and better. And then this one. Last lesson I'll leave you with before I allow Mandela to have the last word. Here's this rude awakening that I've come to in my old age of 52, about to be 53 years old. Did you ever hear Obama quote King about the arc of the moral universe? Yeah, and I was one of those dummies who's like, cool, that shit's just bending the right way. We'll just watch it like the Reading Rainbow, right? It's just gonna end right over here. I had no idea that history was not going to move in the right direction, that we weren't going to continue to make progress, because my read of history, because maybe I didn't have you as my teacher at the time, was that we'd fought all these important battles. We were constantly making progress, ever closer to realizing that hope and promise of being treated equally under the law in this country. We've never gotten there, but I labored under the illusion that we would one day arrive and that we'd never stop trying. Think about this. I'll give you one Texas example. In 1973, abortion was just as illegal in the state of Texas as it is today. Today, there is no exception for rape. There's no exception for incest. There's no exception for the life of the mother. And we are literally losing the lives of women in Texas at a frightening rate. Just as bad in 1973 as it is now in 2025. But there were these three extraordinary Texas women, one of whom you've probably heard, Jane Roe, Linda Coffey, Sarah Weddington, who came from the bright blue liberal bastion of Abilene, Texas, in the far west. That's a Texas joke that you would get if you lived in the state. That last woman, that attorney, was, I think, 26 years old, Chris. Is that right? 26 years old. The most complicated case that she had ever handled as a lawyer was a no-fault divorce, no contest divorce. She and Coffey and Jane Roe prevail upon an all-male United States Supreme Court in 1973 to make one of the most significant decisions the court had rendered in its entire history. Not just securing their freedom in Texas, but securing that freedom to make your own decisions about your own body, about your own future, and your own health care for every woman in every state in the Union. What I didn't realize, as proud as I was of that story, was the day that that decision was handed down is the day that the other side started to work patiently and persistently to bring it to an end. And by 2022, the Dodds decision ended, perhaps not forever, but for the time being, those rights, those protections, and the lives of those women in Texas and other states throughout the country. My lesson learned, one, those women showed me that you've got to try, because if you try, you might have a chance to win. Lesson number two is no victory, no matter how just, no matter how hard fought, no matter how hard won, is ever final. The other side will always be working to bring it down. Voting Rights Act, thanks to Texas again in 1965, but in 2013 in Shelby versus Holder, the Roberts Court, in their infinite wisdom, brings that one down as well, so that it's almost impossible for millions of my fellow Texans to vote. No victory is ever final. And my third lesson, this is the one that I started with here tonight. This fight will never be over. Now, that may depress you. That may distress you. That may invite you to tempt despair. But if you remember that we have this privilege and right as Americans, that you don't have to worry about this shit in Saudi Arabia or Iran or North Korea or Russia or China. You have the awesome privilege and power of being in this fight for as long as you draw a breath, because you are free people in a free land in the greatest country that has ever graced the planet. That's the fight that we're in. So on all of these issues, we cannot give up. We cannot give in. We must keep up the fight, and we must keep up the faith. With that, I'm going to allow our hometown hero to have the last word. Mandela Barnes, one of my heroes too in El Paso, Texas, because this guy has never given up the fight. And whether he's in elected office, whether he's a candidate for office, whether he's helping to lead a nonprofit that's helping others to vote, this guy is putting in the work, leading by example, and is an inspiration to us all. Thank you for being here today, Mandela. Yeah.
So, honestly, I think you closed it out masterfully. I should have let you close it out. You did a wonderful job. But again, I just want to say thank you so much. As a person who's pushing 40 now, Wait, I thought you want young people here. Do you want young people here or not? Youngish. But I also grew up on public broadcasting, and it is incredibly, it's disheartening to see just the attack on information. Public education, public broadcasting, it is truly up to viewers like you, like never before, to ensure that we can still keep this information out there into the public. And when we do get that opportunity, because this is the long part of that moral arc, but when we do get power again, and I've said this before, we have to drive the car like we stole it. We have to act as if there is never a chance for us to do this job again. It doesn't matter if we have 2 years or 4 years, we have to act like we mean it, and that's something Democrats haven't done too well. But this has to be a new era for the Democratic Party. This has to be a new era for the progressive movement. This will be a new era for the United States of America, everybody. And it starts here in Wisconsin. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, man.